Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lululemon Listens, a collaboration with myself, Davina Davidson. I am a Houston-based Lululemon ambassador, and I'm excited to get to share a bit of my story and listen to the stories of the 8 yoga teachers and yogis who have been selected over this bi-weekly series. And this is the first one. We're super excited. We have Kinga today. Kinga McCraven is here with us, and she's going to share with us of her story, and then we'll have some time to ask some questions towards the end. But really, this is a time to be in the listening. Oftentimes, as Black yogis, our voices have been and still are silenced in the yoga community and the yoga industry as a whole, as we know that the yoga industry lacks representation. And so this is a time for us to really just be in the listening and hear the stories of Black yogis, and maybe it's similar to other people, and maybe it is not at all. So let's see what we find and what we come up with. Cool. All right, Kinga, tell us what your full name is and how you like to be identified.
Sure. My name is Kinga McCraven, and I've been using my middle name more lately and dropping the last name a little bit more to find my own identity, my individuality. And you can just call me Kinga. That's fine.
I love that. Kinga.
And you can refer to me as she or they, either I respond to.
Love it. Where are you from? And then, do you live there now, or have you migrated?
I am from Western Massachusetts. I live out in the woods outside of Amherst, Massachusetts, where UMass Amherst is located. And I live here now still. I came back about 3 years ago after living in Chicago for a few years. And I came back here because nature was calling my name.
And like being in the woods.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and there's work to be done here in my hometown that I was feeling called to come back to and do.
Yeah, I love that. Well, tell us a little bit about your first yoga class. Can you remember your first yoga class?
I can, very specifically. I went to Temple University in Philadelphia as a dance major. So yoga was one of the classes that we took. And I remember very specifically the first time doing it because I really disliked it a lot. It was extremely uncomfortable for me. And I think that has a lot to do with the hypermobility that I have in my joints. And there's weakness there because of the hypermobility. And that wasn't properly addressed in my class. So I remember complaining a lot that it was extremely uncomfortable for me in my shoulders and different joints of mine, and not really getting the proper training to know how to avoid that and to enjoy the practice. So I actually didn't do yoga for years after that. And everyone would say to me, Kinga, you would love yoga. I mean, I don't understand why you don't do it, because I'm a mover and I love to stretch. Like, stretching is one of my favorite things. So everyone would say, yoga is your thing. Like, why wouldn't you do it? And I found so much pain and so much discomfort, and I didn't really understand how to properly use my body in yoga. So that was my first experience.
Do you remember if the teacher was somewhat of a peer in age, or if it was a seasoned teacher?
It was one of my university professors, but I don't know that they were actually, I believe that they might have been in training for their yoga teacher training.
We're good for that. For whatever reasons, it's
especially because they were a dancer. So, they were thinking, I think that happens a lot in the movement community. You think you know what you're talking about because you have experience somewhere else, but it's very specific.
Mm-hmm. Yes, certainly. We see that in the crossover in fitness as well. It's like, oh, I have a NASM certification and like I can teach yoga because I understand movement and the body. And there's levels to it and you can teach it to a certain degree. I'm always interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of your peers in that class, do you recall or remember what the room looked like? The people that were in the room?
I was like, yes, very, very specifically. The memory is really stained into my mind because it was such a traumatic experience. I had walked into university already with knee injuries because I was dancing heavily in high school, and I was often dancing on concrete floors or linoleum floors that were in the school. You know, we didn't have proper dance floors, but we had a whole dance department, and I was stepping and I was doing all kinds of things. So I was really messing up my joints, and I had some serious knee injuries. And once I got into university, that really created a gap for me in my education. And of course, my injuries were being blamed on my weight. It was always my weight. It was, you know, if you lose weight, then your knees won't hurt as much. When in reality, I was jamming my knees. So yeah, I remember specifically the demographic because in that experience, feeling like I was in pain and feeling like I needed support and I wasn't able to really get the movement right and really learn properly. It really stuck out as a sore thumb, the demographic. I was one of I think there was 2 other Black dancers in this class with me I want to say in my whole department. There was 4 of us in the department. And I was for sure the largest of all of them body size. And that was something that was never spoken on, but was always kind of hinted towards, or, you know, you just get the energetic reactions from people. And, you know, of course, because there were other Black women in the group with me, there was, some of them had curves and body, but I was the only one that had excess fat on my body like that. And so oftentimes when I was uncomfortable or I was having a hard time or I was in pain, it was almost always attributed to the size of my body and my weight, and that I was needing to lose weight when in reality I was missing, you know, technique and muscle in very specific parts of my body.
I love that. And do you feel like you were aware of that at the time, or are you saying this in hindsight because you've had a really great yoga teacher?
Well, yes, because I've had a really great yoga teacher, and the last 10 years, I would say about 10 years or more, I've learned so much. I mean, my story being in university kind of goes on to, after my first year of being in the dance department, my professors all sat me down, and because we had meetings after, everybody had a meeting with the professors at the end of the year to kind of evaluate. It was supposed to be a 15-minute meeting. Mine went for an hour. And basically they went on to tell me that they think I should choose a different focus in life. Maybe I should switch my department because I'm not able to practice as much as they would like, which I found so refreshing and fascinating about the way that you taught, because you would say, if you can't do it, just observe, and you're going to learn so much from that. And there was no, you know, prompts for me, especially as like a kid. You're going into university, you're still a kid. You know, there was no prompts for me to understand what I was observing and how I could learn from observing. And the fact that I wasn't practicing was something that they took as a clue that I shouldn't be focusing on dance, when I never wanted to be a performer as a dancer. Like, I want to be a teacher or a choreographer and do works like that. That's really what my passion is. And I love studying movement. So yeah, I had to go through a whole journey of that, because that was a really heartbreaking experience for me. I ended up finding my studies back home at UMass of Amherst, where they do BDIC. It's a build your own degree program. And I finished my studies in cultural studies through tradition, dance, and movement, and found my own path of how I study movement. And that has been a whole journey of my body and what it means to be a mover, because especially in the dance world, you know, the first thing that people ask you is, well, what style of dance do you do? And most people are expected to be an expert of some style of dance, or that's their focus. And that's just not who I am. Like, I like to do expressive movement. I like to do explorative movement. I like to do healing movement. And it's not about a style and technique. It's totally about healing and about your body and about expression. And so that has taught me a lot about, it's taught me a lot about the expectations and the standards that we put on what body movement should look like, or what movement art should look like. And so all of that to say, that's brought me to a place where now I understand that it wasn't my body that was an issue, is that I was being put into these standards of what it should look like for my body to move and what a dancer should look like. And nobody in the class looked like me. Nobody. I was totally different from anybody else, you know. And that also comes back to, you know, my mother is from Hungary and my father is a Black American. So I have these two different cultures that are vastly different, you know. And my mother is seen as a white woman when she's in America, you know, because that's the color of her skin. So I'm used to being in these in-between places where I don't fit into anybody's boxes. And in university, that was a huge heartbreak, that like the dance community didn't want to accept me, or that I didn't fit in, until I realized that that was a part of my story, that I needed to find my own path of what that looks like.
Well, that's challenging as well, to then come into a community like the yoga industry right now, and with the overstimulation of on Instagram of certain body types. It's like you leave one community and you come to another community where thin white is right. Like that's what it is. And even when we see bodies that are not thin and white, they may be thin and Black bodies, brown bodies. The point is that yoga is for everybody, literally. And so what I think is interesting is how, because I teach a style that has, you know, students who are dancers, because dancers love rocket yoga, because we do all of the dynamic movements and things like that. And what's interesting is the hyper awareness, or that I see anyways, around overextension in yoga. Like we look at the postures and we think like, oh, it's so beautiful, I want to look like that, I want to do it like that. And you're like, but her knee though is not okay.
And
or
honestly,
like, where are her ribs? Like her ribs have disappeared. Where are her ribs?
Yes. It was refreshing for me to come into yoga from the perspective of having you be my teacher, because you focus so much on the healing aspect of yoga, and that's the authentic history of yoga. And when I see that, that's what brings me back to the culture of dance that I experienced, of, you know, the performance of it. And that there's so much unlearning that I have to do, because I can hyperextend every part of my body, you know, and it'll look beautiful in all of the poses, but it's going to cause me so much pain. And I didn't realize all these years I was doing it to myself. I was actually causing myself the pain, and that there was nobody around me that was helping me avoid that and heal that. And I think that my relationship with you and being a student of yours has really highlighted that is why I need to continue the work that I do, because I see that and I recognize that as a problem that needs to be healed, that we're hurting ourselves in the name of healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a real thing. You said a whole word. Do you practice in a studio where you live, or have you practiced in studios where you live, or in Chicago?
I have not. I think I might have went to one or two yoga classes in Chicago when my wife was doing a lot of classes out there, and they would be like, come with me. But I had such a horrible introduction to yoga and in a studio that no, I've never been called to go into a studio and practice. And so my practice really started to take off at home.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have identified this multiple times through the BLM rocket training that when you search yoga in Google, if you're just at home and you know of this practice and you want to experience it for yourself, that when you search yoga, well, let me ask you, when you search yoga, what do you see? What comes up on your screen?
All you see is white bodies, and you see white bodies that are extremely thin, and you don't see a lot of, you asked the question one day in training, you said, why are you all suffering so much when you have the blocks right next to you? And I remember saying, I just never thought of it. I was never told to pick up blocks, so I don't know really how to use them or what to do. And it blew my mind when you said that. It changed my whole practice, because you also don't see anybody doing modifications. When you search it on Google, you see thin white bodies who are in full expressions of the poses with absolutely no modifications or variations that, can offer support for people who have injuries or who have limitations, and I think, again, I find it fascinating, because if yoga is meant to be a healing practice, what are we really doing? I mean, that the visual to me is it's very telling.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Then have you done any online practices? Have you found platforms or maybe YouTube teachers that you've connected with?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I did a lot of yoga with Adrienne before, who is a thin white body. But I really appreciated her classes. And then I started to find folks on Instagram in the Black community, and that was an eye opener for me. I started to follow different folks like Jessamine, and even like Renee Watson, who does a lot of like just body, raw skin. I love that. So I started to find this whole community of folks online, and I that opened up my world a lot to movement as art, especially too when it comes to yoga, because I didn't really see that in other communities. I only saw that when I started to tap into the Black yoga community online.
Well, yeah, certainly within the Black community in yoga, there is this expressive piece, and that looks like uh, we said body, skin,
Mm-hmm.
or naked yoga.
Naked,
It
yeah.
looks like trap yoga. It
Mm-hmm.
looks like the hoop. I see a lot of hoop
Mm-hmm.
yogis, and I think that is an expression of like who we are as Black people and what we bring to a thing. It's like I don't know what the heck I was watching the other day or reading. I don't know what it was, but it's like whenever you put maybe it was on LaRuga's page. I'm not sure, but it was like if you put spices in anything, it makes it better. So the diversity of bringing more people, Black people, to the practice of yoga, there's some things to learn. And certainly there's a lot to learn when it comes to being a yoga teacher. Uh, if you're in training and you train with people who look like you, who have thin bodies, or even if they don't have thin bodies, uh, but then you never have the opportunity to interact with a Black person,
Mm-hmm.
you never have an opportunity to assist, put your hands on a Black person, to teach a Black person, and then to go into a class and then be expected to know what to do, how to treat. And obviously we are human beings. Hello. And I have absolutely worked with people who are thin white women who were afraid to put their hands on big Black bodies. Like, and I've told the story before where a trainee was doing a rib assist and literally was like, "Where are her ribs?" And I said, "In the same place that yours are."
Yes, that actually recalls a very specific memory of a time that I was with a friend, and this is a white friend of mine who brought me to her yoga studio because she was another one of those people who was like, you should love yoga. This is like your thing, and brought me to a yoga class. And it was so awkward. I was the only person of color in the room. And I just like the stares, the lack of, cueing to my body or acknowledging my body. And then I remember afterwards, there was like a acro yoga in the park that we went to, and we were practicing acro things. And it was like, they were afraid to touch my body and to cue me properly, or to even, have any faith that I could make the movements with my body if they cued me properly. And I think that goes back to just thinking that if you have a certain body type, that you can't do certain movements, and we see that a lot in the dance community as well. And you see people who are like, wow, I can't believe you can move your body like that.
Yeah. Certainly I've been there before on my inversion journey. There, even my own mother, help her, has at times been like, how do you do that? Like, how are you able to do that? And when I said, what do you mean? And my mom is special. So she's like, well, you ain't light. How are you holding yourself up like that? And I was like, through practice. Okay, great. The same way that anyone else learns to do an inversion is the same way that I learned to do an inversion, was through practice.
And our bodies are strong. They can grow the strength to carry the body that we have. If you have a smaller body, you have the strength to carry that body. If you have a larger body, that doesn't mean you don't have the strength to carry that body.
That's
you
right.
can still carry that body and move it lightly in the air and do leaps, or you can move it upside down, and it's the commentary and the doubt is, I think, what can be really crushing and brings on shame.
Yeah, which to me addresses the issue that I see in the yoga community as a whole around yoga is more than asana. Like asana is a very small component of this practice. The movement piece is a very small part. Yes, it's often what brings people to the practice. However, there's so much more to the practice than that. And so I'm interested to know, how has yoga, let's say even the sutras, or if you're more familiar with the 8 limbs, how have those philosophies and principles shifted your practice or impacted your life off of the mat?
Well, the piece about misperception has been really, that part, and the non-attachment have been really strong for me, because I think one, I feel that a lot of assumptions have been made about me in my lifetime. And so I get really sensitive to that, but then recognize that I make my own assumptions based off of the small pieces of information that I might have. And so I've been working on that piece a lot of being more in the moment with my thoughts and my reactions and my understandings of things, that and that's something that I've been a journey I've been working on for years now, is just being really present in the moment, in the now, and accepting the right now. I post a lot about that on my Instagram, about right now. I just think that that's such an important piece of accepting where you are right now and what you have right now. And again, that goes back to the non-attachment. So I spoke to you earlier, I mentioned earlier about the performative aspect of yoga and of movement. And I'm very connected to that because of my experience in dance. So it's very easy for me to go into the performative piece of, oh, I can do this movement, or I can make this look pretty, or I can, move my body in this way. And not to mention, in the dance world, there's a huge stress on the way that stretching looks pretty. So we talk about splits. My dance studio had a whole winter I want to call it was basically a challenge. It was a whole winter challenge where we would go through like the 47 different types of splits, and everyone would try to get their splits down, and how you could get as many as you could. And then at the end of the season, when we did our spring demonstration, you would get a huge trophy. I'm talking huge, like huge trophy, depending on which one you were able to do. And so, you know, every year I would work to get more splits and more splits and more splits. And I was very much so celebrated over that because I have flexibility. And so that became something that I strived towards, that performance of what it looked like to get my splits down. And that's something I've really had to let go of when it comes to yoga. And so, I mean, it comes back to the asana, but it really is about my own mental capacity and understanding of what's important about the yoga. And honestly, that's brought me back to my breath. And it's full circle back to the right now of understanding that when I drop into my breath, that is the practice more than anything. And when I stop breathing, I'm just performing. Mm-hmm. And that actually is a funny piece too, because if I think back, like when I'm performing and when I am dancing, especially when I'm in performance mode for dancing, that is one of the things that I was often training to be in a different place of breathing. Like I would stop breathing, or I would hold my face in this clenched way because I was so concentrated. And I think it's just, yeah, that's opened up my world in so many different ways, of the way that we feel the movement through our body, the way that our bodies are our movement. And I talk about that a lot in dance, that, you know, the things you do every day, that is your culture of movement. That is your movement. You know, if we put together the movements that you do every day and created a dance that is based off those movements, that's who you are. Those are your repetitive movements that you do every day. And so, you know, we each have our own culture of the way we move. And when we're doing it in our regular day, you know, you drop into the meditation of it, you know, or you can. But then when we put it in front of people, we tend to do this whole performance thing and try to impress people and achieve this certain expectation. So yeah, that's something that's really been a gift in my life, of learning to let that go, and that I don't have to twist and bend and expect my body to go into any shape or position for any person or anything, you know, regardless of if people are going to clap and celebrate me and say that I'm great because I can, wow, look at you, you can do that, that's amazing. I'm so used to hearing that, and it bothers me, because then I have to achieve that, and I've always felt that, but I didn't know where it was coming from. So yeah, so yoga's been a gift in that way, of being able to let that go and recognize that my movement is for me. It's not for anybody else, no matter when I'm doing it, whether it's my daily activities that I do, whether it's my yoga, whether it's my dance, it's for me.
Yeah, and that is what is missing, or I think just even the acknowledgement of your daily movements, that piece is what's missing from a still photo on Instagram. Mm-hmm. We compare ourselves, excuse me, I do not. I'm trying to be inclusive here. I do not compare myself. Because I don't have their body. I don't have their experiences. They don't have my body. They don't have my experiences. And so to look at a picture on Instagram and think like, I have arrived when I can do this posture is silly, because we don't know the story behind what got that person into that posture. We don't know if that person hurt themselves. We don't know if they have negative self-talk around getting into the posture. There's a lot of things that I think is important to acknowledge before you get into coveting someone else's practice, which is also a part of the yoga is more than asana. Like, stay on your mat. Like, stop watching the other people. And I think that's also challenging for newer yoga teachers who think that they have to, or even people who want to go into yoga teacher training, they think that their physical practice has to look a certain way or be at a certain level before they can become a yoga teacher. And it's like, not so much, not the
Mhm.
truth. And it is being able to speak from your practice, your daily movements, your body. That's where it's at, is speak from that. And that's how students will resonate with you.
Absolutely. And I think that even goes down to goals. Like, it's great to have goals, but to say that you won't celebrate yourself until you achieve the goal is totally an attachment. You know, I mean, I can't get into the, you know, we're doing the hashtag BLM Yogi See Yogi Do challenge right now. And somebody put out the eight angle pose, you know, and that's like 10 different poses all coming together. You know, you gotta have the whole 10 poses before you can even get to that pose. So I was like, I can't do that. You know, that's just not where my practice is right now. But I can start, you know, the steps of getting into it, and those will be my pictures. And I'm not going to apologize for the fact that I can't get into it yet, or say, even, I mean, it's like, that's why I say it's great to have goals, and it depends on how you're attached to your goal. But to even say, oh, you know, one day I'll have it, I'm not even going to go there. I'm just going to say, you know, this is me right now, and this is what I can do right now, and this is enough right now, you know. And that's something that going back to the breath, that's really helped me, of understanding just even, you know, my breath, when I drop into it, it reminds me the gift that is my body, and that it's not about what I can do with my body, it's what my body can do for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, my body's already doing all the things for me. There's no achievement that I need to make in order for my body then to be worthy of celebration. You know, it is worthy of it right now. And the pose is not what matters. It's about the journey going to it. And I think that just ties back to so many things we do with our bodies, so many expectations we hold for our bodies to be all the things. And that's why I go back when I said I'm not going to twist or twerk or, you know, whatever my body into a position for other people. That's been a huge part of my practice, is being accepting of where my body, not only what it can do, but what it looks like and what it feels like, you know. And I can take the pictures and think, oh, I don't really know if I like the way that my chin looks there, or I don't really know if I like the way my belly looks there. And it doesn't, like you said, comparing yourself to other people. I don't know if it doesn't look like everybody else, or, you know, oh, I wish my body could look like that. No, I have to let go of all of that and just say, this is where I'm at right now. And my body has carried me my body is doing these things for me. I remind myself, and I try to remind others about this all the time, is that our bodies do so much for us every single day. They're the ones that allow us to live and breathe and experience life. And then we beat them up all in the same voice, in the same breath. And it's insanity. It's literally insanity.
One of my teachers, I've done a lot of different teacher trainings, but one of the trainings that I did, it was a rocket training. And at the end of it, in our last closing of class, the teacher said, he was like, repeat after me. And it's like, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And you're like saying that to yourself. And I'm like, because that is a rigorous practice. And it is. There are times where you challenge your body to a place that maybe it's not ready to go. And that's where the discernment comes in. And if you don't have a solid foundation in the philosophies or the philosophy of yoga, then you will push yourself to a place that maybe you go too far and you hurt yourself. Mm-hmm. And it was through the rocket practice that I arrived at the closing that I've said, I don't know, for the last 5 or 6 years. It's like, be grateful for all the things that your body is capable of doing today, and be hopeful for all the things that your body will be capable of doing tomorrow. Practice and all is coming. Mm-hmm. This is a journey. Yoga is a journey. It's not a race. It's not about getting a posture, because when you think you've got a posture, there's another level to it. or there's another posture.
Mm-hmm. And even just the journey, like I said earlier, of getting into the posture is so much so a part of the practice. And that's something I didn't understand fully until I did the training with you. And I would, and so I have hip injuries that I'm healing from right now because I was so used to having the ability of stretching my legs in all these different positions. And I wanted to get back to that. And I started to pressure myself into, finding my flexibility and getting back into that. And that is part of how I found yoga is, those are the folks who are on Instagram who are doing that work. The people who are, in flexibility are often practitioners of yoga. And so those worlds started to merge for me. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe yoga is, and we talk about how I was so rejecting of it. That was when I was like, okay, maybe yoga is kind of closer to the practices that I want to be doing with my body than I thought. If this is a great way for me to like get into, lubricating my joints and finding movement back into my body, it'll really strengthen my dance practices. And I didn't have proper training even then, of course. And so, I'm over here doing the things that I know my body can do, wanting to get into these positions of this, to be celebrated, the expectations of what I'm supposed to be doing. And, I hurt my hips. That's really how it came down to it. And there's so many more pieces that are attached to my hips, but the pressure that I put myself into to find, and that's the other piece is like, you can compare yourself to other people, but you can also compare yourself to yourself. And that can be toxic too. So, comparing myself to my past self, being like, well, you used to be able to do this, you should be able to do this, and trying to get my body to do all these things I used to do when I was 17 years old. And I hurt myself. And that's taught me a lot about what I cannot do to myself. Like you cannot pressure yourself in that way because you're just going to hurt yourself. We try to rush forward to get somewhere and we really just end up pushing ourselves back. And it was devastating for me to, because my physical therapist said, okay, well now you have to stand in parallel. You have to sit in parallel. Don't cross your legs. Don't sit in crisscross applesauce or in your easy seat, you like none of that. And I like to cross my legs when I'm sitting in chairs just like this. I find myself twisting my legs in different positions all the time because that's just the way that I'm used to carrying my body. And I was never trained to undo that. And so, my training with you has really changed my perspective on all of that and helped me also understand how, it's a ROI, a return on my investment. If I take the time now with my body and I properly give myself the treatment and the exercises and the love and care that I need, practice and all is coming,
That's right.
and trust in that and you'll get the payment later on.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think we'll transition into some questions, but I do want to give you the opportunity to share any last thoughts that you have for anyone that you feel like is like you, whatever that means. So,
okay.
whatever perspective that you want to come at that from.
Yeah, I think the first thing that came up for me when you said that, especially based off the conversation we just had, is I'm a recovering people pleaser. And so that ties into all of those pieces of trying to reach other people's expectations, trying to fit into other people's desires of me, because I have this tendency to want other people to be happy and them to be happy with me. And I think that's something that a lot of us have in this society because we are conditioned to protect other people, especially when you are a Black woman, especially when you're a Black queer woman. You're expected to carry everybody. You're expected to nurture everybody and care for everybody but yourself. And so to that, I say, loving yourself and healing yourself is literally going to cure this whole world. I really believe that. I believe that that is a piece of our collective trauma repeating itself in a generational curse. It's all wrapped up in anti-Blackness and the European standards that have caused so much harm to our communities and to our persons. And I just want, I think, everybody to really take their self-healing seriously, because that's going to set us all free. I believe that love is the answer to liberation, and that starts with the self. And so when we talk about yoga, it's like you said, stay on your own mat, focus on your own practice. And when we are on Instagram and we're sharing our practice and we're, interacting with each other, it's not about the comparison. It's about celebrating each other, and when we talk about representation matters, each one of us need to be, sharing, well, you don't need to be, but when each one of us shares our stories and each one of us shares ourselves, somebody else can see themselves in you, and you can see yourself in you. And that's the whole reason I started my Instagram, Kinga Gets Her Life, is because I needed to see people that looked like me. More importantly, I needed to see me. So I started to take pictures of myself as a practice of self-love and posting them online and looking at them, literally just looking at my own page. And that was what it was all about. And I invite everybody to do the same thing. Take pictures of yourself as a ritual of self-love and look at yourself and celebrate yourself, because we're all unique and individual, and we need all of us to make up the greater healing that will set us all free.
I love that. I love that. Do you have anything else that you want to share?
I don't know. I shared a lot. I think that's
you did. You shared a lot, and the people are like, I have questions to ask.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody has questions.
So here's how we'll do it. If you'd like to ask a question, you can place your question in the chat now, and I will read off the questions. If it's for Kinga, just say it's for Kinga. And then if it is for me, just say it's for Davina. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kinga, for sharing just authentically, because that's one of the reasons why I connect to you, is there's a realness to you that I appreciate. And it's not about perfection. It's not that like you have your life together and that you're a perfect Patty. It's like, no, it's interesting.
I'm figuring it out. And I feel like it's so important to do. And I realized the more that I share all of my journey and my wanting to figure myself out, it's inspiring other people to do the same. And I think it's so important that we heal. I think that's so important. And maybe part of the reason why I think it's so important is because I've been told over and over in my life that it's not important, that my healing is not important. It's not as important as making sure everybody else is okay. It's not as important as making sure that other people are happy or healed. I should focus on them first. And I just find that to be really backwards. And I think the reason I talk about it so much is because of the gaslighting I've experienced and the amount of internal dialogue I have with myself saying it's not important. It's not important. Everybody else is more important. Take care of everybody else. And like if you focus on yourself, then you're not helping the rest of the world, or yada yada whatever. So that's why I talk about it so much, because otherwise in my head I'm gonna keep that cycle, and I'm gonna be like, oh no, it's not important. Keep taking care of everybody else. And that's how I found myself ill so many times.
Yeah.
I think that's true for so many people, that our illnesses come from our lack of listening to ourselves.
Yes, I think what's challenging or that can be tricky is in this pursuit, this journey, it's like and I can speak from because for me, the journey of, I use my Instagram for the same exact thing. When I first started my Instagram, it was like to see myself, to track my progress, to see my body move in certain ways. Because you can't see yourself until you put a mirror up or a recording up. Like you can't see your movements. And I think the challenging part of that is that if you don't have a foundation in what yoga is beyond the physical practice, you can lose yourself in ego. Mm-hmm. And an ego is like, yes, you are important, and we want you to love yourself, and I want to love myself, and not so that it puts other people down or condemns other people or makes other people um, feel a particular way because they don't look like me, because they don't sound like me, that kind of thing. So there's this line that we walk as like
Mm-hmm.
Insta yogis to
Mm-hmm.
share authentically, and at the same time not be not saying like be like me.
Right.
No, be like you.
Right. Right. And it's a tricky line to follow, especially on Instagram, because it's such a like limited platform, you know, so you can't really go that in depth all the time, and it takes a lot of strategy to be able to properly express, you know, what it is that you and get your message across. People think that it's a yes, there's social media, something you can use socially, but there's strategy to how you communicate to people in any setting, you know. And maybe I think about that a lot because I'm a performer, and so I often think about, okay, well, what is the message I want the audience to receive, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and that's cultivated, that's crafted. And for me right now, stepping out of the training with you, I'm really, like I said, when you mentioned the thing about blocks and suffering, that blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, why am I making myself suffer even more? That makes no sense. I didn't even know the blocks were there to support me. Like, look at all these different ways I could use the blocks. So, I mean, now I'm really excited to continue to share my practice in that way of, you know, rather than striving towards a pose, which is totally what I would have done before the training.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's more about, you know, sharing where I'm at right now, and that just matches my message so much more that I'm wanting to spread, you know,
Mm-hmm.
is that where you are right now is more than enough.
Yeah, it is. And you don't have to hurt yourself in the process. I know so many people who have hurt themselves uh, doing Insta yoga, like
Mm-hmm.
literally not warm, popping up into a handstand or
Mm-hmm.
whatever for the gram, and then like, you know, get a little tweaky or like, oh dang, what I do to my wrist? And it's like, you did not warm up before you did that handstand. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that
Mm-hmm.
that piece. I also think that in Instagram, there is a place, we are that community has evolved in the last 5 years. There is a place for um, you know, yogis like Diane Bondi, Jessamine Stanley. There are places for you to go to experience seeing someone who might look like you.
Mm-hmm.
What I enjoy is that you have that piece. You also have community in a different kind of way. And I spoke about this the other day with a friend, is that there's a sharing of more than just the yoga, like the asana piece that has started happening in the last couple of years, that helps me feel connected to people in that community and to really see myself in them uh, that wasn't there before, right?
Absolutely.
If you're going there just for the pictures, just to scroll and judge and look and whatever, then there's also uh, that's there. But if you stop and actually read,
Mm-hmm.
I call people out all the time. I'm like, did you read my post?
Right.
I don't care that I got a new retwist. Like,
Yes.
did you read the post? Because you need the post. You don't need to say like, your hair looks so nice, Savina.
Yeah.
Like, go back and read.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I said when I found the Black community on Instagram, the Black yoga community, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been missing this my whole life. And then I got even more, I got kind of frustrated when I got into training, and you were like, these are all the teachers that you can go take classes from. And I was thinking, all this time there's been all these Black yogis I could take classes from, and I just didn't know where to find y'all. And that's part of the, you know, the algorithm, the racism in the algorithm, you know.
Yes, we have a couple of questions, or at least one question for sure. As a white-bodied 200-hour CYT, I want to know what specific things you each want to see from teachers of my demographic as we work together towards dismantling the whitewashed state of the yogic spiritual community. My short answer is, real short answer is to treat everyone the same.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, like, if you would go and assist the white person that's next to me, like, then assist me in the same way. See me in the same way that you see your other students, versus avoiding because of discomfort or whatever the thing is. It's like, see them, see the human being in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Kinga, do
Yeah.
you have any thoughts?
I mean, I think even to go a step deeper into that is like, think about the way that everybody's body looks, feels, and moves differently, and do your best to teach to that too. One of the things that Davina did that I really appreciated was often spoke to the way that people's bodies are just built differently, and that we need to approach movements in different ways because of that. And that I thought was really inclusive and welcoming. And then, you know, if you are, depending on what work you're doing, to amplify the Black yogis around you. We just talked about, or I just mentioned really briefly, the racism in the algorithm, and that's a real thing. Whether you are online, actively online, or whether you are in your community physically, to just put on the Black yogis around you, that's huge. That's really shifting the whole dynamic. It's the same thing that we talk about in the rest of society. Amplify Black voices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's also a question around people trying to sexualize or fetish your body or who you are on Instagram, and how have you responded to that? I mean, I definitely a few years back was in the body positivity kind of movement and community, and such that to the point where it was like, I participated in the naked yoga community for a short period of time, because for me, it was about connecting to my body and being comfortable with my body, my new body after having like 2 kids. I mean, I got the time that I say this, and it's so frustrating for me. I told Kinga about this the other day, but my most liked picture on Instagram in the history of my Instagram is a picture of me in my bra and underwear with a selfie in the bathroom. And you can see all of the lovely tiger marks and claws and all of that. And the comments on there are like, "You're so brave." And I'm like, for what? For
Mm-hmm.
having a body and loving my body the way that it is? Like, you could do that too. That's not bravery.
People don't recognize how insulting, in fact, that is, to say that that's bravery, that you should feel what should I feel besides bravery? Shame? You know what I mean? There's a certain like implication there that, oh, you're so brave for sharing your body. Do you say that to other people on the internet that have that ideal looking body, ideal in the standards, that are thin and who have thigh gaps? Are you being like, oh my gosh, you are so brave? You know, yeah, that bothers me so much. And I get that a lot with my photos, because I have fat on my body, you know, and so I'm showing all the different parts of my body and doing it intentionally. And I often get that, you are so brave. Or I get people on the other spectrum who are sexualizing me, you know, and who are saying really nasty comments to me, either in my DMs or on my page. And Instagram doesn't care. You know, you report the comment and they're like, oh, nothing about this goes against our guidelines. In fact, they're probably more worried again about my picture showing my body than the sexual harassment I'm experiencing in the comments.
Yeah.
So that took me a while to kind of figure out how to approach that. Do I not share my body because people are going to want to speak to me in a certain way about it, or to sexualize me? Or do I have the right to take up this space and just share my body? My body is not a sexual object. It's just my body.
Right.
So, you know, yeah. And then there's so much shame that we have conditioned. I know I have a lot of shame conditioned with the culture that I was raised in, that says something about you to share your body, that devalues you and degrades you. When in reality, like you said, I just want to connect back to my body, and my body is the most natural and raw part of me.
And there's such a fine line. It is so like, it's like, what I think is challenging is finding that line around, can you do this work? Can you love your body and not do it on social media? And then what is the conversation around why you're doing this work with your body, but then sharing it publicly? And for me, my answer and work around body positivity has always been around be you. I'm myself. I love myself as I am at all costs every day. Because I have to live in this body. I don't have to live in your body. I don't have your life experiences. And notice I said I don't have to, meaning not I don't get to, but I don't have to be thin. I don't have to have a thigh gap. I don't have to have small breasts to be valuable and to be worthy. And that is where my work came from. And the reason why I pivoted away from that community is because it did become sexual, and that was not what I was there for. As well as like having a teenage son who's like, when he got to high school, he was like, Mom. I was like, all right. At first he was like, whatever, it's your body. And then he was like, I think it was 10th grade when he was like, Mom. And I was like, cool. And I took the pictures down. And we moved to, went on about our business. And so I think that it's a personal journey. Being body positive, or even just learning to love your body and connect to your body, whether you're male or female or however you identify. I think that is a part of the work, is connecting to the physical body, because we start with the outer sheath, the outer layer, and work our way in. That's just the way that we are. We work with the gross elements first, and then kind of work our way in to the more subtle elements.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Cool. Well, I think that we are at the point of wrapping up. I want to just say thank you so much for those of you who logged on this morning and listened to us share, and even shared some of your perspectives. And this is just the beginning. And I'm hopeful that listening to us is one piece of you beginning to really listen to other people in your communities or in the Black community. And it's not just like, oh, I did this one thing on a Sunday, right? It's like, oh, okay, this is something that I need to integrate into my life more regularly, to actually see people and be with people in community. And then Kinga, I'll give you one last opportunity to share anything that you like, and then remind everyone that we are back at 5 p.m. today with Bruce Williams, Bruce the legendary Bruce. So do come back on at 5 today to listen to our brother Bruce. Kinga?
Yay. Yeah, I would just like to echo that it's so important to listen to the stories of others, and especially that we as a collective humanity are not going to be free until the folks who are the most oppressed will be free. And so listening to stories from Black people, Black women, Black queer women is so important, because that is how we get free as a whole society. And it's such a ironic, I guess, thing, or it's such a sad thing that the people who are suffering the most are the ones who have to speak up and who have to be the ones to say something. I mean, the only reason I have so much to say about bodies is because my body has been policed my whole life. And so, that just goes back to, we have to listen to these stories in order to heal from them, because these are the traumas that are in our society.
Yep.
And so yeah, and I have a performance happening on Thursday with my company Counterculture Educator. You can find us at Instagram at Counterculture Educator, and we're doing a performance for the community on Thursday evening. So definitely check us out there. And as of course, I'll be continuing to share my yoga journey and my journey of self-love on my Kinga Gets Her Life page as well. So I hope to see you all there as well.
Yeah. Sweet. Thank you so much to Lululemon for allowing us to have this space and opportunity to share. Thank you, Asher, for behind the scenes work. Thank you to Jason McCraven for the marketing piece. Thank you for everyone who is here in this space right now, and for sharing and continuing to share the series so that more and more people can be in the listening. With that, peace and blessings. Happy Sunday, everyone. See you later at 5.
Yay. Peace.